Danny Koker and Scott Jones used to work together really closely at Kustoms. Now Danny has finally talked about the real reason why they stopped working together, and it's really surprising. How their partnership started. In Las Vegas, where you could hear car engines running and smell fresh paint, two men became partners and lots of people around the world watched them on TV. Danny Koker, who people called the Count, was already famous from a show called Pawn Stars. He knew a lot about old classic cars. Scott Jones came from Tennessee and knew how to fix cars. They met when Scott came to Las Vegas to visit his girlfriend, who worked at Kustoms for a little while. When Scott visited, he met Danny, and they had a talk that changed both of their lives. Danny saw that Scott was really good at what he did, so he gave Scott a job at Kustoms. At first, Scott worked as a bookkeeper. That means he took care of the shop's money and made sure each car project made a profit. He paid really close attention to details and was very serious about his work. People at the shop quickly started to respect him because of how hard he worked. As the shop got bigger, Scott got more jobs to do. He became the manager, which meant he watched over everything that happened each day and made sure all the different parts of the shop worked well together. You could see Scott's work everywhere in the shop, from the front desk where customers came in to the garage where they fixed the cars. People watching the TV show Counting Cars could see how well Danny and Scott worked together. Sometimes they got along great, and sometimes they didn't agree on things. Danny was the creative one who loved fixing up old cars and had big ideas. Scott made sure the business part of the shop ran smoothly and didn't lose money. Because they thought differently, they sometimes argued, especially about how much money to spend and how long projects should take. But these arguments showed how they balanced being creative with running a good business. This balance was really important for making the shop successful. Like in any partnership, problems started to happen. Small arguments about money, deadlines, and what was most important began to come up. These problems were small at first, but people who paid close attention could notice them. The way they used to work together so easily started to show signs of trouble. This gave hints that there were bigger problems that would eventually make them split up. The way Danny and Scott worked together, both on TV and when the cameras weren't filming, showed how hard it is to be friends and also work together in business. In reality TV shows, it's hard to tell what's made up for the show and what's real life. While Counting Cars showed them fixing up classic cars, it also showed people watching how the relationships between workers made the shop run. But cracks started to show in their relationship, making people wonder if this tension would eventually cause them to break up. Growing problems and what people thought was happening. Scott Jones was someone everyone knew on Counting Cars. People liked him because he was serious and didn't joke around much, and he did a lot of work at Kustoms. But when the third season came around, he wasn't on the show anymore. This left fans confused and wondering why he suddenly disappeared. The History Channel, which showed the TV series, gave a short explanation. They said that Scott had moved to Tennessee after his son was born. This was talked about in the first episode of Season 3, where they mentioned that Scott moved to be closer to his family. Even though this was the official reason, fans couldn't stop wondering if there was more to the story than what they were told. Fans started making up all kinds of theories about what really happened. Some people thought that Scott might have done something wrong with the shop's money. They remembered that back in 2017, another worker named Joseph Frontiera was accused of stealing money from the shop. But there was no real proof that Scott did anything like that. Other people thought maybe Scott and Danny Koker didn't get along. They were the show's star and sometimes disagreed on the show. This made some fans think that maybe they fought behind the scenes and that's why Scott left. News websites and magazines made these rumors even bigger. Tabloids and entertainment news sites wrote articles that hinted there might have been fights or scandals. These stories usually didn't have real facts. Instead, they used information from people who didn't want to give their names and just guessed at what happened. Even with all these rumors going around, Scott stayed quiet. He didn't talk about any of the guesses people were making, which left fans to come up with their own ideas about what happened. The fact that he didn't say anything made the mystery even bigger, and his leaving became one of the things Counting Cars fans talked about the most. While all this was happening, Kevin Mack, who had been Danny Koker's friend for a long time, took over the job that Scott used to do. Kevin fit into the role really easily, and he quickly became an important person on the show. Him being there helped keep the show going the same way, but it also made people notice even more that Scott was gone. Fans kept wondering what really happened behind the scenes. As time went by, Scott not being on the show became part of the Counting Cars story that everyone remembered. The official reason for why he left never changed, but people still had questions that nobody answered, and fans stayed curious about his leaving. After all these problems and tension, Danny Koker finally decided to talk about it, and what he said shocked fans and left them stunned. What Danny Koker told everyone. For years, fans of Counting Cars wondered and made guesses about why Scott Jones left Kustoms. The show kept playing on TV, but Scott being gone made many people wonder about the reasons why he left. In a rare interview where Danny Koker was very honest and open, he finally answered these questions. Danny owned Kustoms, and he explained what happened that made Scott leave. Danny talked about this during an interview on a really popular podcast. He was invited to talk about how Kustoms changed over time and about the people who worked there. This podcast gave Danny a chance to speak openly about the changes inside the shop, including why Scott left. The timing of when he did this interview was important, because it was a time when Danny was thinking back on everything that happened. This let him share details about the challenges the team faced and the decisions they made. During the interview, Danny explained that several things influenced Scott's decision to leave. One of the main reasons was that Scott decided to move to Tennessee to be closer to his family after his son was born. This personal choice meant Scott's priorities changed, which made it really hard for Scott to keep working at Kustoms. Also, Danny said that there were problems and tension inside the team. These came from people having different priorities and different ideas about how to run the business. These differences weren't unusual because they happen in any workplace, but they helped lead to Scott's decision to leave. Danny said he felt sorry about Scott leaving. He made it clear that this wasn't an easy decision to make. He talked about all the good things Scott did for the shop and how hard it was when everything changed. Instead of saying it was just one person's fault, Danny explained it as something both of them were responsible for. He pointed out that both personal reasons and work reasons played a part in what happened. To back up what he was saying, Danny talked about specific episodes from Counting Cars that showed how things were changing inside the shop. He pointed to behind-the-scenes footage that showed the growing problems and how the team tried to adjust and deal with them. Talking about these episodes helped viewers understand how complicated the situation was. Even though Danny was very open in the interview, he chose not to talk about some things. He didn't want to comment on the rumors about money problems. People had been talking about that, but he decided to focus on the personal and work reasons for why Scott left instead. Also, Danny kept Scott's personal life private because he respected that his former co-worker wanted to keep some things confidential and not share everything with the public. Now, let's look at how Scott responded to what people were saying about him. Scott Jones, who used to be a familiar face on Counting Cars, quietly left the show. This left fans puzzled and really curious about what happened. People knew him for his job as the bookkeeper and operations manager at Kustoms. Scott was a really important part of how the shop worked behind the scenes. He took care of the money, organized projects, and made sure the shop ran smoothly. He did all of this while also being part of the TV show that fans loved to watch. Even though he was so important, Scott chose to stay very quiet and private after he left the show. He didn't do any big interviews to explain why he left, and he didn't make any public statements. He didn't address the rumors or answer what fans were wondering about. Because he stayed silent, it made understanding the full story really hard, and people had to guess at what really happened. From what people know publicly, Scott's decision to leave was really influenced by personal reasons and his family. One of the reasons that most people believe is that he moved to Tennessee after his son was born. This move showed that his priorities were changing, meant he wanted to focus on his family life and get away from people constantly watching him, which happens when you're on reality TV. Moving meant leaving behind a job where lots of people knew who he was, a busy shop, and being on a TV show that lots of people watched. All of these things could be demanding and cause a lot of stress. Making this choice shows that his personal well-being and taking care of his family were more important to him than his career goals. This created a clear line between Scott's private life and the person fans saw on TV. Contracts and work agreements might have also played a part in limiting what Scott could say to the public. Reality TV shows often make people sign agreements that say they can't talk about certain things that happened during production or problems at work. Even if Scott wanted to tell people his side of the story about the split, these agreements might have legally stopped him from talking about it fully. This layer of work restrictions helps explain why he has stayed quiet for so long. It also explains why fans have had to rely on guesses, rumors, and what other people say to try to piece together his story. People who used to work at the shop and co-workers have sometimes shared indirect information about what Scott did at Kustoms. The people who worked with him always say he was good at his job, professional, and valuable to the shop. While they might hint that there was some small tension or differences within the team, nobody says that Scott left because of any major bad behavior or doing something wrong. Instead, what they say paints a picture of someone who was capable, reliable, and really cared about making the shop successful. These views from other people support the idea that Scott left more because of personal reasons rather than fights at work or any scandal. There are also different views from what Danny Koker said about what happened. While Koker talked about problems inside the team and different priorities as reasons Scott left, some people who know what happened believe the split was mainly because of personal and family reasons. Scott moving to Tennessee and wanting to focus on his young family might have been the real main reasons, rather than any disagreements about work. Also, while Koker describes certain problems as small or something both people were responsible for, some people think the creative differences were bigger than what was said publicly. These differences could have led to a friendly decision for Scott to leave without creating more tension on the TV show. Because Scott never directly told his side of the story, fans are left to figure out what happened based on the information that's available. Him staying quiet while it leaves many questions without answers also shows that he deliberately wanted to keep things private and protect his personal life. This choice is very different from reality TV, where private things often become something people talk about and guess about. Scott choosing to stay quiet shows he wanted to focus on his family, his personal well-being, and keeping his life separate from being in the spotlight. How Scott Jones leaving affected everything. When Scott Jones left Kustoms and counting cars, it caused effects that spread through the fan community, the media, and the shop itself. In the short term, fans quickly noticed he was gone. Social media websites were full of guesses and theories, with people thinking everything from creative fights to rumors about money problems. Online forums, comment sections, and fan groups looked really carefully at episodes, searching for clues in how much Scott appeared on screen. Fans who had gotten attached to seeing him at the shop felt like something was missing. His calm way of managing things and hands-on approach had been a big part of the team's chemistry on TV. The sudden empty space in how the show worked was felt right away, and many people said they were disappointed and worried about the changes at Kustoms. At the same time, the work side of the shop also had to make adjustments. Kevin Mack, who had worked there for a long time and knew a lot about fixing cars and knew the team well, took over Scott's old job and responsibilities. He took over both the manager duties and the role on the TV show, which helped keep things consistent for the people watching on TV. While Kevin's work was valuable and helpful, the change highlighted how important Scott's role had been in balancing the everyday work with making creative decisions. For the people watching, the shift brought a noticeable change in how the team worked together. This showed how one person leaving can affect both the business and how it looks on television. The media coverage about the change made the situation even more complicated. Entertainment news outlets, people who comment on reality TV, and YouTube channels shared theories, looked closely at episodes, and guessed about problems behind the scenes. This coverage made fan discussions bigger, mixing real facts with guesses, and kept the story alive in public conversations. While some reports focused on work differences, others talked about personal priorities, showing the human side of the decision and how hard it is to balance family, work, and being famous. Over a longer period of time, Scott leaving had effects on both his personal life and Danny Koker's public image. For Scott, stepping away let him focus on his family, including spending time with his young son, and on private projects that people weren't watching and judging. This choice showed he consciously decided to make personal well-being more important than public attention. For Danny Koker, Scott leaving showed how challenging it is. To keep a team working well together on a show that lots of people watch, it required carefully managing what the public thought, making adjustments in team roles, and talking with the audience to explain changes without making people guess and wonder even more. The situation gave people a way to see how complicated trust, dynamics, work boundaries, and creative partnerships are in reality television. Several lessons come out of this situation. First, clear talking and communication is really important in creative partnerships. The balance between personal priorities and work responsibilities has to be managed with honesty and respect. This helps reduce misunderstandings and keeps the team dynamic strong. Second, dealing with fame requires careful thinking about loyalty, work relationships, and being watched by the public. Decisions made behind the scenes can become public stories, which shows the need to manage your reputation while protecting personal privacy. Finally, being transparent has to be balanced with being careful about what you share. Sharing enough information to keep trust with fans and co-workers is important, but sharing too much can hurt privacy and long-term reputation. Now, let's look at the problems and controversies they faced and how they got through them. The stealing money accusations and controversies. In 2017, a problem quietly started behind the doors of Kustoms, the Las Vegas car shop that caught the attention of car fans and reality TV fans. The controversy was about Joseph Frontiera, who used to work at the shop. He faced serious accusations of stealing money from the business. The claim said that Frontiera took about $75,000 and used the money to buy things for himself, including a down payment on a fancy, expensive car and airplane tickets. Also, he didn't pay the shop's taxes on time, which resulted in the IRS giving a penalty of about $18,000. This incident brought unexpected attention to the inner workings of Kustoms, a place where engines roared, and custom designs came to life, but also where trust and being accountable were really important. What Frontiera did became something people talked about publicly, partly because Kustoms was well known in popular culture. Since the shop was featured on the History Channel's Counting Cars, every staff member's role was made bigger by the cameras. This made any mistake more visible to everyone watching. The lawsuit that the shop filed against Frontiera said that he had even made signature stamps of the company's owners so he could approve payments without asking for permission. This legal action made it clear how serious the claims were and suggested he broke trust in a way that went beyond just a simple mistake. Fans of the show were interested and concerned not only about the money that was lost, but also about what this situation showed about what was happening behind the scenes. During this controversy, attention naturally turned to Scott Jones, who had been a manager and bookkeeper for Kustoms for a long time. Fans and news outlets wondered if Jones might have been involved in similar money mismanagement problems. On the TV show, Jones had been an important person in watching over operations and taking care of the shop's finances. This made him a natural target for people to guess about. However, it's really important to say that no concrete evidence ever linked him to any wrongdoing. His involvement remained unproven, and officially he was not blamed in any legal proceedings related to what Frontiera did. Even though there was no proof, people kept guessing and wondering. Social media was full of theories, and online forums picked apart every detail they could find. People tried to draw connections between Frontiera's case and Scott Jones leaving the show. Some fans wondered if Jones leaving was related to the money controversy, while others suggested it could be because of creative differences or personal choices he made. The public's interest in reality TV personalities and how on-screen drama